Button now. We're now recording, so when we want to go back and rewatch, we should have it. Basically, I was still looking for Dylan, making sure I didn't see Dylan in the room. Oh, Dylan, I see him. Good job. You're in, Dylan. Cool. So everybody's in. We just finished chapter 4, reviewing the test from chapter 4. We're now moving into chapter 5. The general housekeeping is that we have a forum discussion box on our Blackboard. That could be a cool way for you to integrate this knowledge with each other and communicate. If that's not good, then we can just keep with the short answer assignments. There's a new short answer assignment for chapter 5 using a lot of the same information. So again, we kind of start the general class with any thoughts, questions, comments. Is that somebody raising his hand? Nicholas is raising his hand. What's going on, Nick?
I put in the connection isn't really there. Like everyone's noticing you keep cutting out, or like it freezes like every other word.
Oh my gosh, we're having bad freezing issues.
So just trying to think about it, would it be easier for you to record it now or constantly happening?
I hear you. I'm shooting a message right now to our IT guy. He might want to launch a new session. He might not. I'm not certain what the plan will be. What's the difference? I hit the button that says record it to my computer, whereas before I hit the button that says record it to my cloud. I wonder if that would affect the difference or not. That's what I was advised to do by our IT guy. So everybody agrees that we're having issues.
I'll say it seems a bit better on my end now, but we were having issues a moment before, most definitely.
Yeah, I mean,
every other, yeah.
I wonder if it's a product of people joining as people still join and get in, if it's unstable or...
Could be. I don't know.
I hold my hands up. I'm not a computer person. I'm doing my best here with everybody. I guess we just keep trying, and if it stops working and says we can't do it, then we won't do it. But I guess we'll keep trying. So do I click the button? Does Nick still have more questions, or do I click the button to put his hand down? How does that work? Did you want to lower your hand, Nick, or do you still want it up?
It
should.
There
it says lower hand. There you go. There.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So we are continuing to move forward on our new format. And the idea is that we are preparing for chapter 5. Some things to think about. The whole purpose of this class is to prepare you to pass the written exam, the FAA written exam. So one of the big things that we really got to put at the forefront of our focus is getting through this written exam. So I'm trying to facilitate that. I'm trying to encourage that by creating these assignments. So every chapter, there is a new assignment. The new assignment, every chapter, is that you need to submit a practice written. So if there's anybody that has not done a practice written, a true FAA practice written, now is the time. I'm not saying that you have to pass. I'm not saying you have to get 100% or even a passing grade, but you need to take a practice written. Practice written is 60 questions, 60 questions. Practice written, it should be 60 questions, and I think you get 2 hours. Maybe it's 2.5. I think it's 2 hours. 2 hours to complete 60 questions for the practice written exam. And whatever grade you get on your practice written, take a picture of it, write it down on a piece of paper, write it into a Word document, whatever you have to do to document it and submit it through that assignment section. So I'm just trying to make it really clear that practice written is the big goal of the class. You all need to take practice writtens from the FAA question bank. There's lots of different websites, softwares you can use. Sporty Study Buddy is pretty good. Is there any questions about that? Practice writtens. So it'll probably be worth 10 points, you know, just like another homework assignment. And the big thing for you is that then it lets you know where you're at. The actual final, the final exam in this class is worth 50% of your grade. At least that's what it was supposed to be. So all of a sudden, you know, that is a very big test, and that test will be FAA test bank questions. So I'm trying to repeat myself multiple times in case there's a funny internet connection. I think everybody's heard me a few times now that you need to take practice writtens. It is one of the assignments. It's worth points. Any thoughts, questions, comments about FAA practice writtens? All right. My chat button lights up. Is somebody trying to chat with us? Is it just me, or is it cutting out every few words? Nope, same here, and that was at 10:40, so it's right now. Do you want us to just email you the results? That's fine. The best thing you can do, Charles asked me a question, do we want email? And you can. I'm flexible. If you want to send me the email of your results, you can do that. But I think that it's going to be more confusing. So to answer Charles' question, if I was you, I would actually submit your assignment of the practice written. I would submit that assignment on the assignment section of Blackboard. So for example, Charles, every chapter 5 is the chapter we're working on now. When you go to your Blackboard, you hit the word content and chapter 5, and one of the assignments will be FAA practice written. Submit your practice written here. You click that button. There's a small dialog box. You can just literally type the fact I got a 70%, I got an 80%, I got a 60%. You can just type it. Or if you took a picture, you can click the button that uploads the picture. That is the best spot. That is where I prefer you to submit that assignment. And then every chapter, you'll submit a new practice written. And as you get closer and closer to the end of the semester, hopefully you're seeing your practice written scores increase. So I'm hoping that I answered your question. Please, Charles, you know, respond back and let me know that you hear me loud and clear, that you're getting that. All right, I think everybody understands practice writtens. Okay, so we're about to move forward. I have some PowerPoints. We're going to launch PowerPoints for Chapter 5. What I really want everybody to be thinking about is that this next test, which is Chapter 5, is going to be a comprehensive. So it's kind of like, you know, the idea that, you know, we've covered Chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and now we're doing Chapter 5. So as you prepare yourself for this next chapter test, you know, kind of thinking almost like, you know, midterm, you know, we're like a week past midterm here in the semester or so, and the actual final is going to be comprehensive. So as we continue at this next test, Chapter 5 will be chapters 1 through 5. I'll try to put more emphasis on the new material, Chapter 5, but as I go back and I look at all of our grades and our scores collected from chapters 1 through 4, I think we need to keep reviewing that information if we're gonna, you know, succeed here. So the next test is kind of more of a midterm style, which is going to be chapters 1 through 5. Now, I'm thinking out loud about this testing process. Normally, our tests are what, you know, closed book, closed notes. Like, you know, what does anybody think about this? You know, like, is there really any way to tell you that you can't use your book or look up answers? You know, everybody's kind of quiet, right? So I'm going to do the best I can. You know, I'm going to explain it to you that if we were together in a classroom, it would be a closed book, closed note test. That's what it would be. There is absolutely no way for me to tell if you have a second browser open, if you're looking up answers on your phone. There's no way for me to tell if you got your book, you know, open under your desk and I can't see your computer screen. There's no way for me to tell. So I don't know what to say or do about it. We're going to do the best we can. We're still going to give the tests. I could set a time limit. I will set a time limit on the test, you know, but I don't want it to be unrealistic and I don't want it to be like evil or mean or nasty. So the real FAA test, you get 60 questions for 2 hours, you know? So I'm thinking it's going to be a similar format, but what I really just want to encourage to you is that cheating is not going to help you, because when you take the real FAA test, you will have to go to a physical testing location and they will proctor it, and you won't have an open book or open test. So the whole purpose of this class is to prepare you for that real FAA written test. And if you're cheating, you know, and opening your book and looking up answers, okay, it might give you a few better points in this class, but it's not necessarily going to help you achieving the goal of passing the real FAA written exam. So I'm just trying to be, you know, the best I can, think that through logically. If you guys have any input on the idea of testing, you know, I'm all ears about it. I think we kind of all understand it's really difficult to enforce something when we're not together. Sounded like somebody tried to speak up, but maybe not a lot to say. All right, so that's a lot of administrative. Any other thoughts, questions about the class or how things are moving forward? Or are you guys ready to talk about chapter 5? I heard an I appreciate the interactions. Okay, so I'm going to start clicking buttons on my end. That's going to open up my screen, and you should see the things that are on my screen. So I'm going to click screen share, and let us so I'm thinking, oh, I got to click one more button. So you now are seeing my screen. Yes, no?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So here's our Blackboard. We are currently in content chapter 5. When you load up content chapter 5, one of the first things that pop up is called AFD. AFD stands for Airport Facilities Directory. I'm not going to be able to go through this entire document with you. It's 15 pages long. I'm going to hit the high points and let you know what it's good for. So as you progress in flight training, you're going to start doing some cross-country flying. Awesome. You're going to use the airplane as it was actually intended, to go somewhere. Hooray! I can see you guys are so excited about cross-country flying. Maybe you're going to have some cool destinations. You know, I would really, you know, encourage you to take your instructor to some place where they serve lunch. You know, if you take them to some, you know, small city where there's not even a restaurant on the field, extra credit when there's a restaurant on the field. So you might want to look up some more information about each particular airport you fly to. That's what this document's really good for. It's called AFD, Airport Facilities Directory. What you're learning is that sometimes vocabulary changes over time. So it used to be called AFD, Airport Facilities Directory. 9 out of 10 pilots might still refer to it as the old name. The new name is actually called Chart Supplement. So the new name is called Chart Supplement. The old name is Airport Facilities Directory. At the end of the day, it is a green book. If you actually purchase a physical book, it would be a green color. And Sean says he's now with us. Right now, the students are saying that it's working better. So I don't know if we need to relaunch it or not. The idea is this is your Airport Facilities Directory, AFD. And this is just kind of a sample. Again, I'm not going to go through every single piece of it. It's 15 pages long. But for you, as a brand new student pilot playing in a cross country with your instructor or a solo cross country, you're going to use this document to research information about the airport you're going to fly to. This is the legend. Here's very important information for you guys. Very important information. When you take the practice written exam or the real written exam, you will be given a chart. You'll be given a supplement, an extra book that has figures and legends. When it asks you to reference a figure, it'll give you a real deal figure, but it will not tell you to reference the legend. So in that supplement, in the extra book they give you to take the practice written, you flip to the front of the book and you can find this document, the legend, and it explains to you what every single one of these coded messages could mean. So when you're taking a real written exam, you can possibly look up some of this information in the legend if you didn't know how to read the actual figure to begin with. So we'll start off with number 1, city name, whatever city it is you're flying to. Let's say we're going to go to Eagle Creek Airport. So your city name would probably be Indianapolis. Airport name, probably be Eagle Creek. There might be an alternate name. Some of them have alternate names, maybe something county, Marion County, Indianapolis West, if you had some other type of alternate names involved. Number 3, this is the identifiers, like LTS. For us, it would be EYE, Echo, Yankee Echo for Eagle Creek. And then if they put a K in front of it, that means kind of North America, if you will. So there's ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization. And if it's an ICAO recognized airport, then they'll have a K, and it could be a 4-digit airport identifier. Whereas if it's not necessarily ICAO airport, then it's only a 3-letter identifier. Okay, number 4, it's telling you whether it's a civil or military airport. Number 5, 3N. That means that the actual airport center is located 3 nautical miles north of the city center. So whatever city, the actual airport is located 3 miles north of the city. Okay, number 6 in a circle, UTC. UTC is Universal Time Coordinated. Universal Time Coordinated. What does that mean? Zulu time. So everybody has a different time zone, and in Greenwich, England, that is where time begins. So that is Zulu time. That is Universal Time Coordinated. I was grading some of somebody's key term exams, and somebody said the word military time. Yes and no. Military time could still be local, but it's not the same thing as Zulu time. It's not the same thing as Universal Time Coordinated. So the current military time of England would be Zulu time, which is not the same thing as the current military time in Indiana. Why? Because, we're 5 hours away. We're 5 time zones away, 4 time zones away. And daylight savings time affects that as well. Spring forward and fall back. So in this fictitious sample airport that we're studying, the UTC time, it would be -6. So whatever the current Zulu time is, you -6, and that would be the local time in military for that local airport. If it was daylight savings time, then it would be -5. That's why there's -5 DT in parentheses. There's a lot going on with Zulu time there. Don't beat yourself up if you don't totally understand it, but it will be important because you'll have many questions about Zulu time. Why is Zulu time so important? Because everybody has a different local time. So all of a sudden, if you call up flight service station and you tell flight service station that, hey, I'm going to be leaving at 2 p.m. and I'm going to arrive somewhere at 6 p.m., well, all of a sudden, there's different time zones. They need to have the accurate exact time Zulu, not just necessarily local. And then, 2 p.m. would actually be 1400. 6 p.m. would actually be 1800. And that'd be the military local, and then you'd have to make the adjustment for Zulu, which here in this case, you would add 6 hours, because the local time, you'd add 6 to get to the Zulu time. I'm doing my best to try to say that a few times. I'm trying my best to really repeat that. Zulu time. It's going to be a huge conversation. Make sure you be careful with your numbers, Zulu time. That's number 6. Nobody's raising their hand or asking questions. Anyone else just crashed? So Kai is having issues. He's saying that he crashed. Not good. We try to avoid that as pilots. Is everybody else still with me? I'm getting a thumbs up from Isaac, thumbs up from Maya. So for some reason, we're having issues with him. He might be able to rejoin. All right, we're going to keep moving forward. We'll try to keep trucking. Number 7, this is latitude, longitude. So you can look up latitude and longitude, and you could be even more precise on any chart, not necessarily just aviation chart, and use latitude and longitude to locate the actual center of the airport. It's just another reference of where the center of the airport is. That's number 7. Okay, so here's number 8. They're giving you some more information about it here. What are they telling you? They're telling you where can you find this airport. So for example, maybe it's on a Jacksonville sectional chart. You know, H4G would probably have something to do with a high altitude chart. That'd be more for instrument pilots. And L19C, that'd be more for low instrument chart. Again, those are for instrument pilots. So this same airport facilities directory, the same chart supplement would be used by both VFR, visual pilots, and IFR instrument pilots. So positive, winning, we're winning. You're going to study this chart one time here at private, and you're going to get to use it again in instrument and commercial. So that's a plus, very basic knowledge. It's saying the word copter, so I think it has something to do with helicopters as well. IAP is instrument approach, things of that nature down here. 8, 9. So we're moving on to number 10. Wonder where number 10 is. Here's number 10. It's a picture airport sketch, if you will. Really handy information. You should have an idea of, you know, what the airport looks like. You should be able to visually look at the sketch. A picture says 1,000 words. You're going to have a much better idea of what the actual layout of the airport looks like by looking at the sketch. What are you going to learn about this? Here's a symbol. Do you guys see the symbol that I'm circling with my mouse? That would be a windsock. So there's a windsock located there. There's a windsock located here. There's a windsock located here. So you, as a brand new pilot, you might personally want to go fly over that airport and look at the windsock before you land. That could be handy information. So knowing where those windsocks are is very handy information. This symbol here, this is our VOR symbol that's underneath my mouse. And that VOR symbol could be handy because you might be using that ground-based navigation to navigate to the airport. This is also another VOR symbol. This one's more of a TACAN. This one looks more like a VORTAC. These dark solid blocks are airplane hangars, maybe possibly buildings. Here we go, a P in a circle. PAPI, P-A-P-I, Precision Approach Path Indicator. Remember we studied the red and white lights? This one's kind of awkward. Look at this dashed 3-3 and 1-5. That's a waterway. So if you had a seaplane, your seaplane could possibly be landing in this area. Here's some interesting squiggles. Are you guys seeing these interesting squiggles underneath my mouse near the approach end of 1-8? That's going to be your displaced relocated threshold. So remember we talked about the arrows. You don't land on the arrows. You can use the arrows for takeoff. You can use the arrows for back taxi, but you do not land on the arrows. So this is showing you that there's going to be a displaced relocated threshold that would be basically shorten up the landing distance of runway 18. So I'm really kind of taking my time walking you through this chart supplement, airport facilities directory, legend. As we get farther and farther in, you know, questions are encouraged. We're probably not going to be able to cover every single part of it, but it's 15 pages long, but these are some of the big ones just to get you started. Nobody's asking questions. I keep going. Number 18 here, it's showing you the different runways. It's showing you their dimensions, what kind of pavement or asphalt or concrete, if it's grooved or not. And all this information is coded. You don't have to memorize all this, but it has to do with a lot of the different types of pavement. You know, if you flew some 747 that weighed, you know, 1,000,000 pounds, then, you know, you might care more about how thick the pavement is at all the different airports. For our single engine Cessna, it's probably not a big deal. If they have a runway, it will probably accept us. But you would want to definitely pay attention to the length of the runway and the width of the runway. You don't want to be trying to land on a runway that's too short. That's actually a regulation, pre-flight action, Part 91, that you cannot be trying to use a runway that's too short for your takeoff and landing requirements. So here is a very good place where you can get information about the runway length and width. Right here, it's telling us the words right traffic. Look at that. So if you're using runway 18, if you're taking a written exam and you're trying to figure out which runway is left or right traffic pattern, this is where you might find the answer. So on runway 18, it's showing you that there's right traffic. Remember that this threshold that's displaced right here, it's even telling you the information. It's displaced by 300 feet. Right here, it's showing you that runway 18 has an upslope. It's not a level runway. It's actually sloping up. Whereas runway 36 slopes down. For every up, there's a down. All right. So that was us analyzing runway 18, runway 36. You can do the same type of analysis for the other runways, 9 and 27, and some of these other runways as well. Okay, land and hold short operations, LAHSO, LAHSO. Remember, as a student pilot, you are not permitted to accept land and hold short operations. If Tower says to you, hey, 401 Victor uniform, you're clear to land runway 18, hold short of 27. Well, this chart here would let you know how much distance that is, 6,500 feet. Well, yeah, that's long enough for a Cirrus, but you're a student pilot, so you're actually, your response should be unable, student pilot. It's illegal. It is not correct for you to accept a land and short clearance as a student pilot. As a private pilot, you could. You very well can participate. And if you think it's safe, if you think you have enough available landing distance, then yes, you can accept that clearance. But if that's the case, you would land on 18, and you'd have to stop and hold short before you reach runway 27. Land and hold short. And this document, Airport Facilities Directory, chart supplement, is where we can get more detailed information about the runway landing distances available. Nobody's speaking up. We're continuing to move forward. I'm not seeing any questions or any pop-ups. Again, as you continue moving in this document, same idea. It's telling you a lot of these different possible distances. You know, you don't have to memorize all these. You'll hear more about these when you're a multi-engine pilot, you know, and commercial pilot, you know, takeoff runway available, takeoff distance available, accelerate stop data available, landing distance available. For you, just landing distance available is probably the big one, you know, understanding how much runway you have to be able to land, you know, takeoff runway available. Takeoff distance available. A lot of these numbers are the same, but if you had displaced thresholds, relocated thresholds, then they could suddenly change. All right, we keep moving. Arresting gear system, that's going to be more if you're like a military pilot and you got a hook that hangs out the bottom of your airplane, like imagine some really cool fighter jet that lands on an aircraft carrier and gets hooked. Well, there are some possible arresting gear systems at these land airports where these pilots could practice. So in this fictitious airport, you're seeing that as well. All right, here's some real important stuff for you guys. Number 22, we're on services. They're telling us what kind of fuel. Gosh, we need 100 low lead for our single engine airplane. So if they don't have 100 low lead in the AFD, in the chart supplement, you might be wasting your time if you need gas. OX would be oxygen, the different types of oxygen. What kind of services? They also have lighting, a lot of different types of lighting. You'll learn a lot more about all these different types of lighting as an instrument pilot, because when you're coming out of the clouds to try to find the airport in the dark, in weather, you learn a lot about the airport. And you should still learn and start to familiarize lighting. MALSR, medium intensity, runway lighting system, runway alignment indicators. I'm sorry, A is approach lighting, medium intensity approach lighting system, runway alignment indicators. Real, runway end identifier lights. So that would be like a flashing white strobe light. So you guys will do some nighttime flying to get your private pilot certificate. So you might want to kind of study up on some of these lights to help you identify those airports at night. The reals, REIL, is runway end identifier lights. They're white strobe lights. They help you find the airport, the actual approach end of the runway that you want to land on. Once you have the reels in sight, a lot of pilots would ask Tower to go ahead and turn off the reels because they can kind of blind you when you're trying to land, but they're pretty helpful when you're looking for the airport from a distance. We've covered VASI, visual approach slope indicators, HIRL, high intensity runway lighting, PAPI, precision approach path indicator, MIRL, medium intensity runway lights, and then CTAF, we've covered that, common traffic advisory frequency. So why are they talking about CTAF in the middle of all this lighting business? Well, it's because we turn on all these lights using the CTAF. Remember the mic clicks? You click 7 times to turn it on, 5 times for medium, 3 times for low. So it's called alphabet soup. Unfortunately, there's so much in aviation where you have to study and learn what all these acronyms mean. So I just walked you through briefly a lot of those. You'll probably have to find yourself, studying up on a lot of those before you become an instrument commercial pilot. Even as private pilot, you should at least be somewhat familiar, maybe not necessarily an expert, but it's going to help you find the airport at night to know what kind of lights each airport has. I don't see anybody asking questions. We keep moving. We have some military arresting gear, some different types of fluids and fuel for military, some training. All right, we're in 23 airport remarks. Airport remarks. So they have some special rules because they do parachute jumping. All right, let's have an example of Zulu time. Are you guys ready for an example? Maybe something to work our brains. So check this out. Here, it's telling us that there's some special air traffic rules. And it's saying that the airport is going to be attended to 1200 through 0300 Zulu, and then it's got a weird double plus sign. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through what that means. So they're giving us the time in Zulu. So they're telling us that this airport is attended. The airport opens for business. You could probably land there even if the FBO is closed. If the FBO is closed, you could still land there, but nobody's there to unlock the door to let you use the bathroom. Nobody's there to sell you gas. So the airport is attended, the FBO is attended 12 Zulu to 0300. So what does that mean? 12 Zulu. Well, if we go up back to the top and we apply some of this information, we learned at the very beginning that UTC minus 6 is this particular airport, this fictitious airport. So whatever Zulu time, you subtract 6 to find out the local time. So what local time does this airport open? 12 subtract 6, 6 a.m. So this airport, FBO, opens for business at 6 a.m. local time. That's the same thing as saying 1200 Zulu time. When does this airport FBO close? Well, according to this, it says 3 Zulu. Oh my gosh. Okay, 3 Zulu. So 3 Zulu is when the airport closes. According to our UTC minus 6, whatever the Zulu time is, minus 6, that's how we get to local. So the FBO services close at 3 Zulu. So I need to subtract 6 from 3. That's actually going to be what, 21 Zulu? 21 Zulu. I said that wrong. 21 local. 21 local. So 3 Zulu is when the airport services close. What time is that local? I subtract 6, which would be 21. Why? Because when you get to 24, there's 24 hours in a day. There is no 25th hour, so the 25th hour is really hour number 1 again. I'm not trying to lose anybody. If anybody's nodding up and down or left or right or thumbs up or thumbs down, we're doing our best. So one more time, 3 Zulu. 3 Zulu, you would actually be subtract 6 in this example would take you to 21 local. What does 21 local mean? That means 9 p.m. That is going to be if we are outside of daylight savings time. Oh my gosh. We're confusing now because we're daylight savings people. So in the parentheses, it says minus 5 DT. So all of a sudden, if we, spring forward, fall back, if we're in the time between spring forward and fall back and daylight savings time is in effect, well, then that means that this particular airport is 5 hours away from Zulu. So it opens at 12 Zulu in the morning. So 12 subtract 5, I'd actually be at 7 a.m. local. The FBO closes at 0300 Zulu minus 5. That'd actually be 22 local, which would be 10 p.m. I'm not trying to be confusing. I'm trying to help you out, apply some information. You will have lots of questions about Zulu time, trying to figure out the math of local time versus military time versus Zulu time. If anybody has any questions popping up, I'm more than happy to answer them. Or we just keep moving. Oh, maybe? No? Okay. All right, so we're going to keep moving. And we had an example. Hooray. They're telling you here that deer are in the vicinity of the airport, so watch out for deer. I've heard a lot of stories of pilots, you know, maybe possibly having encounters with wildlife, so be careful for deer. If you see one, there's probably plenty more. I guess something I should tell you guys for real world pilots, even though this document says that the FBO is open from 12 Zulu to 3 Zulu, you'd be very wise to call ahead. So don't just assume that the document's right. Don't just assume this publication is 100% correct. You know, standard businesses in the world can change their hours, their policies. So it's very wise for you as a pilot to go ahead and pick up the phone and call ahead. And that, as we continue reading this document, we'll see, you know, some phone numbers we can call ahead. All right. What else are we searching for? You know, 24 is still talking about more military remarks. It says the word PPR. That means prior permission required. Prior permission required. So, you know, if you don't have prior permission at a military airport, you're probably not supposed to go land there. A lot of private airports are that way too. So if you imagine like it's a really cool vacation destination spot and you want to fly your airport there, it's a private airport, they might require prior permission required before you can land at their private airport. Okay, here you guys go. Look at this. Very important. Bum, bum, bum. It's a phone number. There it is. So if you are planning a real deal cross country somewhere, you'd be wise to go ahead and look up the phone number to the airport, call ahead. You could ask them, you know, hey, do you have a courtesy car? You know, it's worth extra credit points if you fly your instructor to an airport where there's a courtesy car, so that way you guys can get in the car and, you know, see something other than the airport bathrooms. You could ask all sorts of different phone questions to them. Do you have 100 low lead? Can you confirm me you have 100 low lead? You could ask them questions, you know, what are your hours today? Do you sell sectional charts? Anything that you might want to purchase when you're there, pilot supplies. All right, we're getting into some real important stuff here. Weather data sources. So what I'm explaining to you is that it's your responsibility to plan cross countries. So when you plan across country, you want to be thinking ahead. And this is some very important frequencies. This is very small font. It's on a computer screen. You might be able to get it on your iPad. But what's going to happen is when you're flying a real deal airplane and you got your hands full flying an airplane, the last thing you want to have to do is try to thumb through a book to try to look something up. So if it's a frequency that you know you're going to use during this flight, you'd be very wise to go ahead and write those frequencies down on paper. So that way you have them written down, convenient access when you're flying the airplane. You'd call that cockpit management. So here it's saying 120.3 is the weather frequency. So at this fictitious airport, the AWOS, the Automated Weather Observation Station, is 120.3. So as you approach that airport and get closer to landing, you would be correct to dial that communication frequency up and listen to the local weather. And that's going to help you determine what the winds are, what the altimeter setting is, so you can figure out how do I enter and which runway is the best for landing. Maybe you wanted to call up that weather station and listen in advance. Here's the phone number. So we all fly at the Eagle Creek Airport. If you haven't done so, you might want to look up the Eagle Creek AWOS station and put that phone number in your phone. And then you could be anywhere, you know, driving around or walking around and pick up your phone and you could listen to what the local weather is at Eagle Creek before you go to your flight lessons. All right, we keep moving. We're going to keep pushing for a few more minutes before we take our break. We're on number 27. It's talking about CTAF. That's our Common Traffic Advisory Frequency. That's if we're trying to talk to the other traffic, people in the traffic pattern, airplanes in the traffic pattern. If you're talking to airplanes in the traffic pattern, you're talking on the CTAF, Common Traffic Advisory Frequency. Unicom. Unicom is if you're trying to talk to anybody on the ground, typically the FBO, the people that work the fuel truck, the people that tie your airplanes down, put your airplanes in the hangar, the people that are going to sell you supplies. If you want to talk to Unicom, you can call ahead and make sure that they have 100 low lead before you land. It's very bad business if you're flying on a long cross country and you need fuel and you land and then they don't even have 100 low lead for you, then you have to go now take off again and fly somewhere else, and you might be hurting on fuel. So it's very wise to call Unicom ahead and ask them if they have 100 low lead. ATIS, automatic terminal information system, that's more at a towered airport. So like the untowered airport would probably have like an AWAS machine, an automated, whereas the ATIS is actually recorded once an hour by a human being, an air traffic controller. So the ATIS machine would record once an hour. The air traffic controller typically would record their own voice. Some ATIS machines can be a digital computer recording. And the ATIS will give you information alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. Every hour is a new ATIS, and you need to know what the current ATIS is if you want to enter their airspace. You need to already have done some homework and know what the current conditions are at their airport before you enter their airspace. It's telling you here the name of the flight service station and all the different frequencies to get a hold of flight service. That's a huge, huge conversation. So if you need to get a hold of flight service, these are the frequencies at this fictitious airport where you would best be able to get a hold of flight service station. Why would we ever get a hold of flight service station? Weather briefings. We could file a flight plan, amend a flight plan, close a flight plan. Maybe we want to give a PIREP, a pilot report, let the other pilots in the world know what the clouds are, what the visibility is, where the winds are blowing from, if it's turbulent, if there's icing. So there's all sorts of services that flight service station provides. Flight service is more about flight plans and weather, and PIREPs, whereas air traffic control is more about clearances. So I see a lot of younger pilots confusing the differences of flight service versus air traffic control. So I'm trying to help straighten that out for you. RCO is a remote communications outlet. So remote communications outlet, that'd be the idea of talking to flight service through a repeater tower. They're not actually located at that destination. All right, this is very important right here, guys. Look at this. See that R inside of a circle? Super important, R inside of a circle. That is telling you who has radar technology. Very important. Who has radar technology? In this case, there is an approach/departure controller, an air traffic controller that has radar technology, and this is their frequency. So why is that so important? If they have radar technology, they can say to you, oh, 401 Victor uniform, radar contact, squawk 1234. And then they can actually watch your blip as you fly across the screen. That's called flight following. Radar technology. They can actually see your position, your altitude, your airspeed. With our fancy mode S transponder, they have all sorts of positive contact about where you're at in the world and the ability for them to give you traffic alerts and advisories to keep you safe from hitting other airplanes or possibly terrain. So the R in a circle, super important. R in a circle tells you who has radar technology. Notice tower. Tower does not have an R in their circle. So if you call tower and you're asking tower, what does their radar look like? They probably don't have radar technology. You need to call somebody that has an R in a circle if you want to talk to somebody to get radar technology. And here, if you notice, they're telling you some times in parentheses, 12 to 4 Zulu, and then the double plus sign. We mentioned it earlier. The double plus sign has to do with daylight savings. The double plus sign has to do with the fact that I think it means they don't follow daylight savings. So even if you are in daylight savings mode, you still just use the normal numbers. I'm thinking that's what that means. So tower, predominantly historically, tower doesn't have radar. Tower is usually these human beings looking out the window with binoculars, watching airplanes in the airport environment. Not really any more than 3 or 4 miles away from the airport, binoculars out the window. Whereas approach or departure, these people have radar technology, they might be watching airplanes on a radar screen for up to 40 miles away from the airport. All right. No, he's asking questions. We're going to try to push on for just a few more minutes. We're going to take a break in just a few minutes. This one's talking about ground control. So some really good information for you is that most ground frequencies are 121 point something. Most ground frequencies are 121 point something. So you as a new pilot, you might fly to an airport and they say, contact ground 0.9er. And then you as a pilot might be like, what? WTF? What was the frequency? All you said was 0.9er. And it's like these air traffic controllers, they know that all the that most ground frequencies are 121 point something. So they're abbreviating their radio calls and they're telling us pilots contact ground 0.9er. Or in this case, they would say contact ground 0.7. And then you would supposed to know because you wrote down your frequencies earlier in your flight planning that ground is 121.7. Or you would assume that it's 121. How can we remember that? Hey, 121.5 is a very famous frequency. Remember the emergency frequency? 121.5. Moving on, GCO. GCO is a ground communications outlet. In this case, this ground communications outlet, it's like a repeater tower. It's like they link your communications radio to a telephone, and so that way you're able to communicate with people farther distance that are farther away than line of sight. Because when you're on the ground, you have very bad line of sight. When we're flying the airplane at high altitude, we have very good line of sight to get good communications with the world. But when we're on the ground, we really struggle to have good communications with the world. So that's why all these ground communications outlets and repeater towers exist. In this case, at this fictitious airport, we have a ground communications outlet for Orlando clearance. So if you want to talk to clearance delivery, Orlando clearance, here is a frequency you could use on the ground to get a hold of Orlando clearance. Ground communications outlet. This is a fictitious airport, so they're kind of giving us all the possible examples. You probably wouldn't see all these examples on the same airport, but in this example, we have clearance delivery. So if you want to get hold of clearance delivery, contact them on 125.55. So for you, as a brand new private pilot, student pilot, you might fly across country to Evansville. So when you go to Evansville, it's a Charlie airspace. You land, you use the bathroom, you top off on gas, you go back out to your airplane, there's going to be a certain order of operations that you have to go through. Who do you contact when? And we'll try to walk through one of these examples and then we'll take our break. So the idea is that you would get to your airplane and the first frequency you'd probably need to dial up is going to be the local information, the local weather. So first would probably be like ATIS. Get the local weather. Hey, we're on information Zulu. We're on information Bravo, information Delta. Now you know what the local conditions are. You know what runways and taxiways are closed. You know where the wind's coming from, the altimeter setting. Good, awesome, okay. The next person you would call if you was at a bigger airport like Evansville, Class Charlie, would be clearance delivery. You'd then call up clearance delivery and you say, good morning, Evansville clearance, 41 Victor uniform. I am on the ground in front of the local General Aviation FBO. I have information Alpha, and I am going to be a VFR departure today to the north to Echo Yankee Echo Eagle Creek Airport at 3,500 feet. So what you just told clearance deliveries, you told them who you are, you told them what you want, where you're going, what you know. You have the local weather. You're going to be leaving their airport to the north, your VFR. You told them what altitude you want to cruise at. So clearance delivery is an air traffic controller, a human being that's going to gather that information from you. They're going to use that information to put you into the air traffic control system. They create what's called a briefing strip, and then the actual air traffic controllers at every air traffic controller station along the way gets that briefing strip either reprinted in front of their desk or passed along from one station to the next. And that information is going to stay with you. And then as you make changes throughout the flight, then your briefing strip gets updated. We don't ever see the briefing strips as pilots, but we know they exist and they are created based on the information that you give air traffic control. And you're going to give a lot of that initial information to clearance delivery. If it's a larger airport like a Charlie or a Bravo airport, then they have clearance delivery on site. If it's a smaller airport like a Delta, then you might just give all that information to a different air traffic controller called ground or tower. Okay, so with that said, that's going to take us up to number 28, where we start talking about the airspace. We'll continue moving forward in in this chart supplement. We'll probably get to some PowerPoints. Is there any general questions before we take a break? Let me click a button and see if I can get back to seeing everybody. So I click stop share. You guys see me again. I see you guys. Kai's got it fixed. Was there any general questions, any thoughts? No. All right, guys, we'll be back in 10 minutes. Feel free to take a break, and appreciate you working with me. We'll be back.
Hello.
Hello.
What's up?
What up?
What's up?
How's it blow?
What?
So I saw a deer head. Do you guys all have the number to the weather station or the METAR over there in Eagle Creek?
I think I do.
Okay, if
Yeah.
you guys don't, I have it.
Ooh, give it to me.
Okay, it's
Let me pull up my phone.
okay. Let me know when you're ready.
All right, I'm ready.
It's 317-329-1754.
Thank you, man. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Key weather.
All right, Schwank. Let's see what this background did.
Okay, you could.
So where do you go back to watch these at? You just have to go to Slack?
Dude, that's awesome. I love it.
I worked hard on this.
I can't even see it. What the heck? What the wait.
I can see you guys through the eyes.
That's funny.
I worked really hard. I have a couple more ideas, but that's, I'll save them.
Hey, Morgan. Come here.
Oh, sorry, I recorded it. Hold on.
Morgan. Come here.
That's great. Good job, Cameron. I'm proud.
Hey, Paige,
Thank you.
come check this out. Come check this out.
Hey, Cameron.
Man.
Hold up. You gotta keep talking, Cameron.
I'm in my natural habitat.
Yes, you
Hey,
are.
Cameron.
You know I told you we could put on backgrounds?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Am I hungry? I just had a burger. Why? Are you hungry? What do you want? Alright. It's like noon. What are you making toast for?
I can't see shit.
Jacob,
Man, you can't be judging if you
Yeah.
don't see some fucking toast.
see how many Chick-fil-A sandwiches I bought?
How many?
Like 15. Like, Jesus Christ.
I'm done. I can't breathe.
He gave me like 30 Chick-fil-A sauces.
Hey, Cameron, you should do that when John comes back and see what he
No.
says.
Wait, how many did
I'm
you buy?
good. The hamster FaceTime call.
And then like 30 Chick-fil-A sauces.
I'll buy one from you. I'll come. Where are you at? Or where do you live at, I guess? Because I'm up in Whitestown now.
South. Yeah, way too far.
Way too far? Alright.
Yeah.
Dude, the best thing I come up with was
This NFL background right here.
Yeah, I saw that.
What up? Wait, I had a jersey too. Hang on.
Ah, nice, bro. Signing day,
What?
whatever it is.
Oh, you're a Texans fan?
Yeah.
Oh,
Can I have a
man.
Gatorade bottle? Hang on.
Who's got the deer head?
Morty. I turned myself into a pickle, Morty.
Yeah, it was a great game. They had a great game plan. Hold on, I need to get over. Wait, I need to get over here.
I'm going to Disneyland.
I want to thank my mom. Yeah, I'm going to Disneyland after this. So thank everyone.
Oh, jeez,
Oh my
Rick.
God.
Hold on.
Oh my God.
Morty, I turned myself into a pickle, Morty.
Roll the pickle over, Morty. Regret it.
Morty.
I hope you're not in a Green Bay jersey.
Yes, I am. Leave me alone.
Oh, God.
Cheesehead nation.
You shut your mouth.
Yeah, shut up, Kai. You weren't even in the class yesterday.
Hey, Dylan.
Let's buy the better one. I might have the better one. Well, you can add more. What should I be? No, I can't do that.
Let's see.
I can't.
I gotta
do
think
that.
of one for next time.
Oh, God, I can't wait for that one.
Oh, here you go. This is 5th grade. Oh, you can't see my face. 5th grade me.
What?
You can't see my face. Never mind. Change it. Change it.
I can see your face.
That's all I want, dude.
Nothing's gonna top the panda though.
Oh no,
Just
nothing
saying.
at all.
Do that
Oh,
one.
my
Do
God.
that when John gets back.
That's great.
Oh, wait. There we go. Now I have.
A mate. You have a mate. Give him a kiss.
I can't fucking breathe in this thing.
Oh, my God.
Where's the rest of the students? They must have all left.
No shit. I don't know. Everybody's just being quiet.
Oh, we got a few. We got a few in here.
So I kind of missed going to
Everybody's
school.
in here. They're just all muted.
Living my best
Why
life
the
in
hell's that
quarantine.
cricket out again?
I'm just gonna go to space, whatever.
I flew too high today.
Yeah, out of my own airspace.
Hey, Dylan, nice haircut. Sitting there with the
Had
fucking
a
thing in the
French
back.
flank.
Well, yeah, I got this one.
Oh man. Did you already eat your toast?
Gotta sit down.
Not reading that.
Y'all are too loud. I'm trying to enjoy my coffee in peace.
Dude, it's noon. Stop drinking coffee.
You can drink coffee any time of day.
Have you even slept yet?
Coffee is liquid gold. All right. Come on.
Liquid
Vita,
turd.
He's
liquid
not
gold.
wrong.
Liquid turd.
You're not wrong.
Have you slept yet, Isaac?
Yeah, I did sleep last night. I only got 5 hours though. That's better.
Dude, I take a nap every day, all right?
I see. I can't do that. Once I'm awake, I'm awake. That's it.
Yeah, I can't relate to that. You come work at FedEx then, man. We could use you. We're very.
Okay, where in FedEx do you work?
I work at the one in Zionsville.
Is it like is it a distribution center?
It's like the FedEx ground. So yeah, like there's what I do is basically like the chutes come down onto a roller, and the roller's like in the semis, and we just load the semis basically.
Okay, yeah, that's what. Because my buddy Levi, he's a team lead at the big one at the Indianapolis airport.
Oh, really?
He makes good. He makes like $23 an hour.
Yeah, we make $15.80 starting out is what I make right now. I've only been there for a month.
Well, they only. Well, yeah, I could do that. I could really do that. But honestly, I'd rather go to the one at the airport because it's just like 10 minutes, 15 minutes down where I am.
Oh yeah, well I live up here in Whitestown now, so it's like literally 10 minutes from me.
Did you guys just move up there, or is that just a place that you got?
No, me and my girlfriend moved up here. We moved in Friday.
Right on. See, my sister's boyfriend, she works at he's a manager at the Lowe's up there in Whitestown.
Oh really?
Yep.
I think we're right by Lowe's, aren't we? Yeah,
We're like by those, aren't we?
That's right on. He's the flooring supervisor up there.
Yeah, we're right by there.
Right on. Yeah, I'm not driving, but if I do that, I'm not going all the way up to Whitestown. Fuck all that.
Yeah, it's nice. I used to be a 45-minute drive. Now it's like 15, so it's worth it. It was tough in the beginning.
So you just load the trucks up?
Yeah, there's like 3 different stations. You can be on unload, where like the semis come in, you just unload them, obviously. There's van lines, where packages come in, and like you're literally by like the FedEx like vans, and you load them for the drivers that day. Or you're an outbound, which is where you load the semis, which is what I do. I think I have the easiest job, to be honest. Like you're just by yourself the whole time.
Oh,
Yeah. Levi, they sort now. They'll pull it off the aircraft and they'll just sort it.
Yeah. Well, I applied there originally, but they told me they were booked.
Yeah, no, that's bull. They're always looking for people.
Yeah, it was stupid. Well, I wanted to get the morning hours. So I work like 3 a.m. to 9 a.m. right now.
3 a.m.
You guys hear me all right?
So you're nearing the end of your day, bud.
Yeah.
really, Dylan?
Yeah.
Check. You guys hearing me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yep.
Lima
All right, so
Charlie.
kind of say again.
Said Lima Charlie.
Right on. Perfect. Yeah, the phonetic alphabet. Gosh, if you have not learned the phonetic alphabet yet, that is definitely a important fundamental for everybody. Cool. Well, I think we're getting ready to get going. I'm guessing that everybody else is back in. If not, then hopefully they catch up here. I'm looking around. I don't see any comments. Nobody's making any big complaints. Basically, just to recap, we've been covering this, AFD Airport Facilities Directory Chart Supplement. And this is a fictitious airport legend. We're pretty much done with this. It's giving you a little bit more information. Here it says, oh, you're not seeing my screen, are you? Let me click a button. So I hit screen share. And I hit this button. Now everybody sees my screen with the AFD chart supplement. And now the idea is we're pretty much done with this. We're just going to hit a few more small things just to, so that way we can say we've covered it all. But like down here, it's telling you airspace. You can get a lot of that airspace information other places, but right here, they're telling you that, hey, Class Bravo airspace for this fictitious airport. They're saying that there's a VFR terminal area chart. Typically, we use sectional chart. And then if you want to get a more zoomed in picture, that would be your terminal chart. So there you go. Let's ask a big question. You guys ready for a big question? How often does chart supplement, how often does AFD chart supplement get printed, get updated? So the correct answer is 56 days. 56 days. It's just about 2 months. You're going to see that question again and again, so you might as well put that one to memory. That chart supplement, AFD, the green book, updated 56 days. That would be the print version. The digital could be different, but the print version is going to be 56 days. They print a new green book, chart supplement, airport facilities directory, 56 days. Now, here's an interesting question. Sectional chart. A sectional chart, which would be our actual map, our chart that we use to navigate with, that is going to get reprinted every 6 months. So when you're trying to put all your dates together, 6 months is the sectional chart. Dates get reprinted. The AFD would be 56 days. And then for us, we fly these fancy Cirrus G1000 airplanes. So they have a GPS database. The GPS database is updated 28 days. Every 28 days. So those are some very important pieces of dates for everybody there. Cool. You can get a lot of this information through your ForeFlight. And I had it set up on my iPad that I was going to be able to Bluetooth or stream my iPad to the but I'm kind of struggling with that right now. So I guess maybe I'll try it real quick. So what I can do, I'm going to stop share on my screen, and you guys should see my face now again. I don't know if it works for me to hold up my iPad or not, but when you get into your iPad, there are buttons at the bottom of your ForeFlight. And at the very far end over here is where it talks about airports. And that's how you get all this information through your ForeFlight. So I assume that a lot of the pilots nowadays are probably not purchasing physical products anymore. And you might be getting this digitally through your iPad, your ForeFlight. So that's kind of a really big, important piece of the puzzle as well. We're going to finish this. I think it's really close. There's not a whole lot more to say. This is our fictitious airport AFD, and it's telling us here there's a VOR test facility. So at this fictitious airport, they have a VOR test facility. It'd be a ground-based station that lets you test your VOR. We've talked before about AVIATES, AVIATES, all the different inspections that the airplane must be kept up with. A VOR inspection is required every 30 days. If you're going to be doing IFR flying in that aircraft. So this VOR test facility would be one of the ways you could test your VOR. Radio aids to navigation. They're saying NOTAM, NOTAM, notice to airmen. So throughout life, throughout the world, there's changes. You know, the section. Was that a question? So throughout, changes happen. You know, they print a sectional chart every 6 months. They print an AFD every 56 days. Changes happen. Maybe they might close an airport. They might close a taxiway. They might build a new cell phone tower somewhere. There are changes that happen in the world, and us as pilots need to be alerted about such changes. So those changes are advertised to us through the NOTAM system, NOTAM, Notice to Airmen. At this fictitious airport, if you wanted to know about any changes that came through NOTAMs, any NOTAMs to this airport, you would actually find it filed under the ORL. So what does that mean? This is a fictitious airport. So our fictitious airport is called LTS here at the top. And this LTS airport would be located near a larger airport. The larger airport nearby would be called ORL, and then they would post all the NOTAMs for the ORL area, and that's where you'd find for this particular airport. VHF, DF, it's kind of an older technology, very high frequency. It's a way that flight service station, air traffic control could help you get unlost. It's kind of older technology nowadays with our fancy transponders and GPS. We probably won't hear a whole lot about it, but it exists. And it'd be a way that ATC could help locate your airplane. And at this fictitious airport, they have that technology through the flight service station. Okay, here we have more information about the VOR TACAN. It has an H in parentheses. That means it's a high altitude VOR. There's actually 3 types of VORs, high, low, and terminal. You probably don't have to have that information until you're an instrument pilot, but it might be good to start thinking about it. Regardless, this high altitude VOR would be, used on the frequency of 112.2. Now, as a pilot, it's really easy. It's really good for you to understand that you don't have to, that it's assumed at 100. All of the frequencies we use for for very high frequencies, they start with 100. So some pilots might even abbreviate this and they say, 12 to 12.2. It's 112.2. They're all 100. Channel 59 is for the military pilots. That lets us know that there's DME capable. Here's the latitude, longitude location for that VOR. And they're telling you that it's, at the field, but I'm not sure. Decoded information. Let's see. So this was the high altitude VOR. There's a TACAN, which is a military ground-based station. There's an NDB. Okay, NDB, alphabet soup. NDB, non-directional beacon. NDB, non-directional beacon. You could say non-directional radio beacon. It's older technology. You would call it LF technology for low frequency. It'd be similar bandwidth to AM radio. It's kind of a joke. Most pilots probably would use the NDB, ADF technology in their airplane to listen to AM radio. It's kind of a joke. I would fly airplanes years ago that had this technology in it, and we would listen to AM radio while we fly because there's not a lot of use. I would suspect that somewhere throughout your lifetime, you probably won't hear a whole lot about the NDBs and ADFs. But it exists. You should know that it happens. They still use it places, like mountainous areas, Alaska. Maybe if you go to some other countries in the world, fly airplanes there. They might have a lot of navigation based off of low frequencies, LF. And NDB would be the ground-based station called non-directional beacon. The equipment in your cockpit would be called ADF for automatic direction finder. And you will have to understand some of that technology, especially to get through the written exams for instrument pilot, maybe a little bit with private pilot. Very simple thing is that the needle head points to the station. The needle head points to the station. The needle head points to the station. It's very similar to on our G1000. You can bring up something called a bearing pointer. So when you bring up the bearing pointer on your G1000, it acts very similar to how the ADF NDB system would act. The needle head points to the station. It's saying in parentheses LOM, that is a locator outer marker. Locator outer marker. It's a type of NDB, but not only does it let you navigate to it, it also sends out a signal straight up. So when you fly right over top of the outer marker, it would create a blue light and some bing, 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 bing alerts in your cockpit. It's for situational awareness. Again, you'll probably use it more as an instrument pilot, but it exists, and you should be aware that these are lots of different ground-based navigation stations that help us as pilots increase our situational awareness if we utilize them. Again, it's telling us the latitude, longitude. Here they're telling us that this airport has an ILS system. ILS is Instrument Landing System. So if you as an instrument pilot, you're going to come out of the clouds, you might use that ILS system. And this would be the frequency that you could dial in to use it, 108.5. Okay, ASR, PAR. Again, this is This is basically a fictitious airport, and they're explaining to you all the different informations that could be available to that airport. ASR, that stands for Approach Surveillance Radar. PAR stands for Precision Approach Radar. What does that mean to you? Well, us as dumb pilots, that means that this airport does have radar. If you as an instrument pilot, they have such good fancy radar, they could literally guide you to the runway instrument approach style. So for us as student pilots, private pilots, we're probably going to notice this R in a circle that's kind of near my mouse. The R in a circle that I highlighted. That's your first dead giveaway clue that this airport has radar technology. If you was more fancy instrument pilot, you might even see down here they have ASR, Approach Surveillance Radar, Precision Approach Radar, and it's just even more technology available. But notice there's limitations on that. 12 to 4 Zulu. So all of a sudden, they might not always have that technology available. Typically, it involves staffing. They have to have a more experienced air traffic controller that's available to utilize that technology. Number 31 says COM, nav, weather remarks. It's telling you that the emergency frequency of 121.5 is not available at tower. Not really sure. Oh, here's a real important one. Look at this. 187 TPA 1000-813. So here they're explaining to you things like maybe field elevation. So that maybe the field elevation at this fictitious airport is 187 MSL. So I have a lot of you guys, struggling with AGL and MSL still. So the field elevation at this fictitious airport, this is kind of the seaplane base right here they're speaking about. The elevation is 187 MSL above sea level, mean sea level. TPA, traffic pattern altitude. The traffic pattern altitude for that seaport is 1,000 feet MSL. So 1,000 feet MSL on your altimeter, that would be the traffic pattern for this seaport. 813 in parentheses is giving you the AGL, above ground. So when you fly 1,000 indicated, you're actually flying about 800 feet above the ground. Some things that you should know, very important. Things you should know, very important. If you go to a new airport, your traffic pattern generally is going to be 1,000 feet above the ground, AGL. So when you go fly to a new airport and you got to figure out traffic pattern altitude, yes, you can use the AFD. Yes, you can use the chart supplement. Those are very correct answers. The rule of thumb for most pilots is 1,000 feet AGL. So whatever the field elevation is, 1,000 feet AGL would be your traffic pattern altitude. There are some smaller airports. There are some other individual cases where they might have an 800 AGL traffic pattern, but those are the exceptions of the rules. If you use a larger jet aircraft, you might fly a 1,500 foot AGL traffic pattern. So it really just depends on your operation in the airport in question. But the general rule of thumb at your level of stage of the game would be 1,000 AGL. So as you keep moving forward in this document, we're probably not going to go through a whole lot more of it. It's just, it's showing you here the sketch. So when you study that airport sketch, all the different symbols and what they could possibly mean. So that could be really handy information for you if you had some interesting symbols on your sketch that you weren't certain about. And then here you see they're basically writing out in paragraph form all the things that I've been speaking to you about. So like, number 1, number 2, number 3, they're giving you full paragraph write-outs, from the FAA source explaining the legend. I just explained it to you in my own terms. Here's the FAA explain it to you in their terms of writing out in paragraph form. Here's a really good one. See that time conversion, number 6? So we talked about Zulu time. If you're still struggling with Zulu time, maybe reading this over a time or two would really help you out as well. Oh, here's the answer to one of our questions earlier. It's saying this double plus symbol indicates that during periods of daylight savings time, the effective hours will be 1 hour earlier than shown, which basically means I don't think they're following daylight savings time. And that's pretty common. There's a lot of places that might open earlier in the summers, have longer hours in the summers. At the end of the day, call the phone number, call ahead, verify their hours of operations. So I'm clicking through all these. If you guys see anything that's, making you excited that you want to talk about, I'm not trying to skim over anything. Here, they're talking about number 14, like airport of entry. They call that AOE, landing right. So if you're an international flight, if you're going to fly into, Canada or Mexico, or actually when you're coming back into America, you need to be sure to land at AOE, airport of entry. So that way borders and customs could, possibly, search your plane if they wanted to. So we're not necessarily certificated airports with scheduled air carrier operations. And this document goes on for about 15 pages. So again, I'm probably not going to, we've explained a lot of it. I'm just showing you that there is more information available. It's not just the words that I said today. You can read this document. You should read this document and see what the FAA has to say about all these legends. All right, so we're going to move on from this. We've spent a lot of time here preaching to you about the Airport Facilities Directory. I'm going to click stop the screen share. If there's any questions at this time about Airport Facilities Directory, chart supplement, now would be a good time. If I was you guys, I would really study the Eagle Creek Airport Facilities Directory. There's a famous website called AirNav, AIRNAV, airnav.com. If anybody is, interested, you can find a lot of this same information posted on airnav.com. Okay. Just when you do it on the airnav.com, it's not necessarily the official FAA source. So in a pinch, if you really want to find some of that information, you don't have the official chart supplement or AFD, pilots could find some of that information in a pinch on airnav.com. It's a great website, but please don't walk into a stage check. Don't walk into a check ride doing all your flight planning based on airnav.com, because that's not an official source. Official source would be the actual green book, or possibly your iPad, which would be 4Flight, because then your 4Flight would download the official sources. Okay, so we're moving forward. We're chapter 5, people. I don't see anybody asking any questions. So we're going to be moving forward to a PowerPoint. So let me click the button to share a screen for a PowerPoint. I'm going to share a screen, and we're going to do a PowerPoint, and I click share. So everybody should see PowerPoint. Maybe, yes, no? Okay. So I'm going to click this button to make it full screen. Nope, I hit the wrong button. This button. And I still see some thumbnails of everybody. Is everybody seeing it? Is it looking good? Thank you. Okay, cool. So we're in chapter 5. Again, you need to read the book. Open up your chapter 5 book, read the book. There's questions at the end of every chapter. We have PowerPoints to help guide our conversations. I have assignments on the blackboard, vocabulary. We also have normal homework assignments. And then now there's some short answer up for chapter 5 as well. As you're studying, it's not just chapter 5. We're going to be doing chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the next test, kind of like midterm style. Communications and flight information. So first it's talking about radar. So radio detection and ranging. Radar, radio detection and ranging. We got a synchronized radio transmitter and receiver. So if you go to a lot of you probably have driven on Interstate 70, I-70, and you drive past the international airport. When you do that, you'll see a red ground-based station that revolves. That's the radar dish. And that's, the ground-based radar station. There are some people that say it's shooting out cancerous signals. And so for us here in the age of 2020, we are trying to get away from using some of this older technology that, might be causing everybody health problems. So radar exists. Radar is important. It's a great tool for us to keep airplanes separated. We are actually moving away from radar. We are moving more into an ADSB type of a setup for us. And but we're still using radar. It still exists, but we are moving away from that and using more GPS with the ADSB. So radar stands for radio detection and ranging. It basically shows us two things. It shows us range and azimuth. It shows us what? Range and azimuth. What's that mean? Azimuth means angle. So it's showing us both the range, the distance, and the angle. Some of the beams that get sent out will get reflected back to the radar station, and that's how they're able to figure out, you know, the airplanes out there. We have transponders, interrogators, and that helps with the process as well. We can get what's called false primary returns. The false primary returns usually could be like things like buildings, the actual ground clutter, even large flocks of birds. So there's our radar technology. We got a few different types of radar, and that's kind of what I was explaining to you, such as the primary radar, which would be, you know, if you imagine where the ground-based station is, where that ground-based station exists, it's going to be pushing off all that signal. And so any sort of buildings or rising terrain or anything that interferes, you're actually going to see that ground clutter. What you need to realize is that each human being that runs the radar station could possibly turn up or down the sensitivity. They could turn up or down the gain of the radar dish on that particular any given day. You'll notice this a lot on weather maps. So when you study like a radar weather map and you're trying to see where the precipitation might be, you might see a light blue ground clutter that exists near the actual radar station center. So it's really depends on the sensitivity gain of the radar station operator that day. Primary radar, it could detect an aircraft without a transponder, but it would not necessarily determine an altitude. So you might have air traffic control tell you 41 Victor uniform, traffic at your 12 o'clock, altitude unverified. So altitude unverified means they see an airplane on their radar dish, but that they're not talking to the airplane. That airplane may not be squawking any particular altitude squawk. They see that there's something out there, but they're not sure exactly what altitude it's at. So you're unable to determine altitude with primary. It's acceptable to ground clutter, which I explained to you is the terrain and buildings and obstructions surrounding the radar dish. And if the radar operator turns up the gain intensity, then the ground clutter becomes extra thick, extra apparent. Air traffic control radar beacon system. So this is kind of more what we're dealing with. We call it secondary radar. So we're at the bottom of the slide now. It's a separate system from primary radar. We have different elements of the technology. You have the primary radar, you have the decoder, the interrogator, and the transponder. Okay, so for our airplane, we have a transponder. And then, you know, you get to put certain codes into your transponder. Squawk 1234, squawk 1200, squawk, you know, you could squawk 75, 76, 7700 for emergencies. And then all that information will get processed into your interrogator, kind of like an interpreter in your airplane that'll transmit all this information into a signal that can be sent to air traffic control. Air traffic control would have the decoder, they would decode your signal, and then they would have more information about what's going on with your particular flight. Some things that I've had people explain to me before. If you're talking with a local air traffic controller and they give you a squawk code that begins with 0, if you're talking with a local air traffic controller and they give you a squawk code that begins with 0, that means local. So then they will drop you. They will not transfer you to the next air traffic controller. If you're getting flight following and you're flying to a long cross country far away and they tell you to squawk 4321, well, then they have created a briefing strip in the system that's going to allow your flight to go ahead and transfer to the next air traffic controller. Whereas if air traffic control gives you a squawk of squawk 0231, it began with a 0, so that's your clue that this air traffic controller is not doing extra work for you. This air traffic controller will be dropping you and telling you to squawk 1200 when you reach the edge of their airspace. Types of radar. So transponder, you got 4 digits between 0 and 7. You got 4,096 possibilities, sometimes called a 4096 transponder. Remember your AVIATES, AVIATES, all your equipment checks, that inspections that need to be done. Your transponder needs to be tested and inspected in the preceding 24 calendar months. So you have 24 calendar months for your IFR check for your transponder. If it's been more than 24 calendar months, it's not a current IFR transponder. You should not go take it flying in controlled airspace for IFR purposes. We have special codes 7700, 7600, 7500 that you're supposed to avoid. So try to avoid accidentally putting any of those codes in. 7700 would be general emergency. 7600 would be loss of communications. 7500 would be hijacking. I kind of remember 7600 because I move my mouse on the screen. I guess you can't see it. But the idea is like if I draw a 6, I kind of have to draw a large C to be able to draw a 6, and that C makes me think about communications. So 7600, lost communications. Transponder operations. 1200, 1200, that means VFR. If you're squawking 1200, that is VFR. Oh, there they are. So here's all our special transponder codes. And we just covered those. Awesome. Here's some phraseology. If they tell you to squawk, that means put that number into your box. If they say ident, what does ident mean? Well, I'm glad you asked. So if you hit the ident button, it's going to make your blip on that radar screen kind of blossom and be very bright. So it's very common that air traffic control would say, squawk 4321 and ident. So you'll hit 4321 on your transponder box, and then when you hit ident, your blip will blossom and be very large, and the air traffic controller will see exactly where you're at without having to search extra hard to read all the numbers on the screen. We have a few other vocabulary words. Squawk, standby. The idea is that your transponder has several modes of operation. It could be in ground mode, it could be on, it could be altitude, it could be standby. Oh, it says more. I'm getting a pop-up. Somebody's trying to chat with us. $7,700 going to heaven, $7,600 radio fix, $7,500 along for the ride. That's cool.
That was my mistake. It was.
Oh, it's great.
It was supposed to be 75 along for the ride, 76 radio fix, 77 going to heaven, something like that. That's the way I was taught. My apologies.
There's no apologies. It's awesome. Thank you for interjecting. You know, like, gosh, it's so cool that, you know, we got to interact, not just hear me babble for 2 hours. Way to go, guys. I encourage that. So yeah, great. Transponder codes. Very good thinking, guys. Very good thinking. We are doing transponder codes, and that was perfect. So we are transponder coding it up, and basically what you're learning is that you could have some bad technology. You know, technology might go bad. So if your transponder is not correctly sending out the correct altitude, if your transponder is not correctly sending out the right codes, if your transponder is screwing up, air traffic controller could request you to use a different mode of your transponder. So say you turn it to the on mode. If it's on mode only, ON, then it's not going to give altitude information. No altitude information. You have to be in ALT, altitude mode, for your transponder to give altitude information. If you put it in standby mode, it's very similar to being off. And then if you're in ground mode, it would not give altitude information. We have a fancy transponder with our G1000 system, so our transponder does all of those different modes automatically. All right, so we're going to keep moving. Transponder operation. Way to go, guys. FAA radar systems. I'm so excited. ASR, we talked about this. Airport surveillance radar. That means that they have a fancy radar dish where they can coordinate IFR traffic within the terminal area. It could also be used to assist them with instrument approaches. Cool. That means it's extra fancy radar. It's extra sensitive. It's so sensitive and so fancy, they could bring an airplane all the way down to the center line at an airport. That's going to be different than TRACON, Terminal Approach Radar Control. So now we're at the bottom of the slide. The TRACON provides radar and non-radar services at major airports, responsible for safe separation, aircraft transitioning from departure to cruise to landing. So this would be more like a 40-mile area is what I'm going to teach you. I'm thinking it's about a 40-mile area or so, depending on line of sight, depending on the strength of each station, altitudes. But if you're within 40 miles of that radar dish, then they should be able to get a hold of you through the TRACON. And the types of air traffic controllers, you have some short answer questions, some homeworks that are asking these questions. And the idea is that there are different types of air traffic controllers that use different technologies. So somebody called Approach, an air traffic controller named Approach, same thing as Departure, an air traffic controller named Departure. An Approach or Departure controller, they would probably be using a TRACON type of radar technology. And that would be about, roughly 40 or 50 mile area. And they would be using that radar system for the purposes of airplanes that are coming into or out of their airspace. Again, it's really for IFR to IFR planes, but you can participate as a VFR traffic airplane, but it's workload permitting. And if that's the case, we would typically call that flight following. If we're getting flight following, that's a service that we request from air traffic control, then they would be helping us out there. Great. Next slide says center. Oh my gosh, it's exciting. So different types of center. What's going on with center? They got something called air route surveillance radar. This is more of a long range radar, like several hundred miles. They say there's approximately about 100 sites in the US. It can monitor aircraft about 200 miles out with the antenna. Some can even monitor to 600 miles. Oh my gosh. So Indianapolis Center is actually one of the largest air traffic control centers in the country. Memphis Center is a very big one. So the idea is that when you fly cross country at a higher altitude, let's say that, a higher altitude. So if you're at a lower altitude, say like less than 5,000, 6,000, you're probably going to be using an Approach Departure type of controller, using a TRACON type of technology. But then when you start flying cross countries at higher altitudes, 8,000, 12,000, now you're going to be dealing with center. And that's where the bigger, faster airplanes are flying, and they're using a different type of radar technology. So what you're really trying to learn is that there are different limitations from the different technologies of the different controllers. So one of the things I really want to explain to you is the refresh rate. How quickly, how timely does that air traffic controller get your actual signal from your airplane? How quickly does that air traffic controller screen refresh? If I'm talking to a Approach or Departure and a controller using like a TRACON system, I might get a picture that's updated, within a minute or two, within like a minute or two, old picture. That's how, if not sooner. But when I'm talking to a center, that picture delay might be something more like 6 minutes. So the idea is that like these controllers are looking at these radar dish pictures, and yes, they're seeing airplanes and transponders, but if there's weather, they are seeing the radar picture of the weather as well. And they are seeing where your aircraft is located in relation to that weather. And so you can use air traffic control as your co-pilot. You can ask them, how does the weather look ahead? Do you think I should turn left? Do you think I should turn right? Can you give me a heading? Give me a vector. I'd like to avoid this massive thunderstorm. And if you're talking with a center controller, their technology for radar is covering such a larger area that it's not going to be as updated of a picture, and it's not going to be as sensitive of a picture because they're trying to cover hundreds and hundreds of miles at very large altitude ranges. Whereas an Approach or Departure TRACON radar dish, it's going to be covering such a smaller area that their weather guidance can actually be more meaningful to you. Again, our airplane is fancy G1000. We have onboard weather equipment. We have all sorts of other resources. But it's still good for you to know as a pilot what the limitations and who has a better radar picture to help you out. So this is the differences of center versus Approach. And we'll keep moving forward. Again, these air traffic control centers, they're primarily used to coordinate IFR traffic, but they can help us VFR guys out as well, our guys and gals that are flying VFR. It's an excellent resource if you get lost. Gosh, let's talk about that word, L-O-S-T, lost. I've never been lost before, right? Never been lost. Nobody's ever been lost before. But, it's a serious thing. And, when you're drive in the car, you can pull over and try to pull out your map when you can stop and ask somebody at the gas station. But the airplane can be a little more serious. We don't want to wander into airspace that is restricted or prohibited. We don't want to wander into some airspace that we're not supposed to be. We don't want to keep flying in the wrong direction, burning gas, getting more lost more quickly. So what you're learning is that air traffic control can be a great resource to help you get unlost. If it's a real emergency and you were freaking out and you really need to use the LOST lost word on the radio, by all means, you can do it. But I'm telling you, it might be a little more tactful. There might be other ways to admit you're lost over the radio without necessarily using the LOST word. So I would encourage you to say things like, oh, Indy approach, this is 4 on Victor uniform. I'm requesting a heading. Can you give me a heading for Eagle Creek Airport? Hey, Indianapolis approach, this is 4 on Victor uniform. I am requesting a vector. Can you give me a vector back towards Eagle Creek Airport? If you want to make it really more clear, you could say, Indianapolis approach, 4 on Victor uniform. I'm unaware of my current location. Could you give me a heading, a vector back to Eagle Creek Airport? If you really want to say the words you're lost over the radio, you can. If you are lost, by all means, admit it. Don't be the person that drives past every gas station saying I'm not lost and, drives the wrong way and goes bust airspace. So air traffic control can help you out, but if you want help from ATC, it needs to be some sort of air traffic controller that has radar. If you start calling tower, you start calling ground, you start calling clearance delivery, you talk to some air traffic controller that does not have radar, they're not going to be able to help you. It needs to be an air traffic controller that has radar so they can tell you to squawk 1, 2, 3, 4. They can find your location on their radar dish, and they can give you a possible heading or a vector to point you in the right direction. Cool. So we're talking about radar and centers. We keep moving forward. VFR radar services. As a VFR pilot, it is not mandatory that you participate. As a VFR target, air traffic control could choose not to accept you if they're too busy with all the other IFR airplanes. I tell you, as a university student, it is one of our requirements. It is something we want you to do. Yes. So please, 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 when you fly cross country, you call up air traffic control and you request flight following. It is so good, smart risk management, because if you are talking to ATC and getting flight following and say you do start to drift off course, air traffic control will let you know sooner than later before you go bust airspace or get too lost. Yes, that makes sense. Simple. Okay. Looking at the dots on our screen, it's telling us that we can request it. It's called flight following. Maybe if you're interested, a local frequency to call for Indianapolis approach, 11905. So when you're on the western side of, Indianapolis airspace and you want to get some flight following, one of my go-to frequencies in our area is 1905. 11905, great frequency to go ahead and contact Indianapolis approach, whether I'm on my way to Champaign, Terre Haute, whatever it might be, Decatur. This is what they're telling you here, is that there's difference between local versus progressive flight following. If it starts with a 0, then it's local. If they start with a number other than 0, then it could be, progressive, and the fact that they're going to give you flight following to the next air traffic controller as well. All right, cool. Let's keep moving. Traffic calls. This is some very important stuff for you guys. You guys and gals, you're trying to take a written exam, and there's going to be multiple questions about traffic calls and where do you look to try to find some of this traffic. So the idea is that the air traffic controller is going to tell you traffic at 1 o'clock, high, traffic at 3 o'clock, low. So when giving traffic alerts, the controller references traffic from the airplane as if it were a clock. So here's a clock in front of you on the screen. 12 o'clock means straight ahead. If you've watched any sort of World War II dogfight, aerial dogfighting movies, the worst thing possible is to have a bogey at your 6 o'clock, right? So if you have an enemy fighter at your 6 o'clock, that means it's right behind you. And, in wartime, they'd be trying to shoot you down if it was an enemy fighter at your 6 o'clock directly behind you. You need a good wingman to shoot to help you out. For us, we're more or less just trying to use these clock references so that way we can figure out where the traffic is. We don't want to hit another airplane. We need to see and avoid. So when air traffic control tells you that 4-1 Victor uniform, you have traffic at 12 o'clock, 2 miles, you need to respond. When air traffic control communicates to you, you need to respond. You need to acknowledge that you hear them. So you could say something like, oh, 4 in Victor uniform, I have that traffic in sight. Okay, you responded that you have contact, you have visual contact, you see the traffic, great. If you don't see the traffic, negative contact. 4 in Victor uniform, negative contact. You could say 4 in Victor uniform, we are searching for that traffic. 4 in Victor uniform, keeping my eyes open, still looking, still searching. The worst thing is when you don't respond. If air traffic control says 4 in Victor uniform, you got traffic at 3 o'clock, 1,000 feet above, and then you don't say anything back because you're still looking, 4 in Victor uniform, you got traffic, 3 o'clock. You know, they have to repeat themselves multiple times. They get frustrated with us. So you need to respond. If you see the traffic, let air traffic control know. Yes, I have that traffic in sight. Yes, I have visual contact. If you don't have the traffic in sight, let them know. Negative contact, I am searching, still looking. So 12 o'clock is straight ahead. 3 o'clock is straight off your right wingtip. 9 o'clock is straight off your left wingtip. And then if it's 11 o'clock, it's slightly ahead to the left. If it's a 10 o'clock, it's closer to your left wingtip, but it's still forward ahead of you. You're generally not going to get traffic alerts if the airplane's behind you. For today's technology, ATC, you know, air traffic control is not going to advise you of airplanes that are behind you because you're moving forward. So if it's an alert, it's going to be forward. What makes it more tricky is when there's wind. Ooh, okay, guys, this is really important. What makes it more tricky is when there's wind. So air traffic control, when they are watching your blip move across the radar screen, they only see your ground track. Air traffic control only sees your ground track. They don't know what heading you're actually pointed. So for example, let's say the wind's blowing from the left. If the wind is blowing from the left, from the west, and I'm traveling north. I'm traveling north, the wind's blowing from the left, from 270. If I want to fly straight over the ground on ground track 360, then that means I am actually going to need to fly a crab angle and have my heading slightly left. So I might actually be pointed to the left, maybe 330 on my heading. I'm pointed to the left, 330 on my heading, but my ground track is actually 360. I'm traveling north over the ground, but my nose is actually pointing to the northwest because I'm fighting the wind. Well, air traffic control, they don't know that. They see that you're flying over the ground straight north. They don't know that you're angled to the left to fight the wind. So all of a sudden, air traffic control says, 4 in Victor uniform, you've got traffic at 12 o'clock. That traffic alert is in relation to your ground track, not your heading. Ooh. So if air traffic control tells me I have traffic at 12 o'clock and I'm tracking 360 over the ground, but my nose is actually angled left and I'm on a heading of 330, where do I look for that traffic? Well, it's going to be slightly to the right because my nose is actually pointed left to fight the wind. And the lesson you're learning, the big picture lesson, is that when air traffic control gives you a traffic alert, that is based upon your ground track, not your actual heading. Traffic alerts are based on your ground track, not your actual heading. So, if you have a wind correction angle, WCA, if you are crabbing and angling due to the wind, then that means you need to look for that traffic based on your ground track, not your heading. There's going to be multiple questions about this on the test, multiple questions on the FAA written exam. I don't want to beat a dead horse. Did I say it enough? Is there anybody that's still struggling with the idea of ground track versus heading? I don't see anybody speaking up or saying anything. Okay. So we're doing good. We're at 12:23. We got a few more minutes. We're going to try to cover a few more slides. Appreciate your guys' patience. I know it's tough to sit in one position so long. There's lots of homeworks on the computer. Be sure to keep working on your Blackboard. We'll try to cover a few more slides. ATC alert. Alerts are issued only when the controller feels safety of flight may be compromised. Altitude alerts could be because of CFIT, CFIT, vocabulary words, Aviation 100. CFIT, controlled flight into terrain. CFIT, controlled flight into terrain. Okay, what's that mean? It means it was a perfectly good airplane that's capable of flying, but yet it collided with terrain, obstruction, bad deal, accident. It was a perfectly good airplane. CFIT. So we don't want to become a statistic of CFIT. So unfortunately, there are a lot of pilots that have lost their life because of CFIT. So if it's a perfectly good airplane that could have flown correctly and flown out of a bad situation, but yet that airplane did not, it collided with the mountain, with the building, whatever, CFIT. Controlled flight into terrain. So ATC could possibly give us alerts if they think CFIT's going to happen. They have, like, say you get too low, you're coming into land at a towered airport and you're dragging it in way too low over the treetops. They would get an alert and they could possibly give you a safety alert. It could also be traffic alerts. So if there's a collision hazard with another possible airplane, they could give you the traffic alerts that we've been discussing about. All right, vectors. So a vector is one of the best services that an air traffic controller can provide us. You could say the word heading. You could say the word vector. They could point you in the right direction. So again, ATC has the ability to give you radar vectors. Vectors, that's basically ATC giving you headings. It could be a heading that gets you to a possible destination. Could be a heading that gets you back on course. As an instrument pilot, when you want to shoot instrument approaches, they might give you vectors to help you join an instrument approach. Maybe you're doing a sightseeing flight over the Mount Rushmore. They might be able to give you a heading that points you towards that destination, so that way you can go circle that area. The pilot is still the primary responsible person for navigating the airplane. So if ATC tells you to fly a heading and they give you a vector to fly, and it's a bad heading, a bad vector that's going to create, an issue, you still have the responsibility to point that airplane where safety needs to point you. But they could help you out by pointing you in the right direction. Controllers cannot see clouds. Sometimes they cannot see rain or snow. So it really depends upon what kind of radar technology the air traffic controller is using. We talked about the difference between approach, departure versus the center. Rain and snow. So let's talk about snow. Snow is a very interesting type of precipitation. We're moving out of the winter season now here in Indiana, but as an Indiana person, you'll want to know this for next winter, is that when you're looking at snow on the radar, the snow is so dense that it's possible the radar picture would show a return, that there's a line of snow coming, but then the snow is dense, the ice crystals, they reflect the radar beams in weird ways, and then it's invisible. Behind this line of snow, there's actually could be a bunch more snow coming, but the radar picture doesn't show it. So snow is very, very difficult for a lot of radar stations. You could have similar things happening with really heavy, dense rain as well, but not as common. And then depending if you're a center versus if you're approach or departure controller, then it would affect how well your particular radar station is able to pick up those different types of precipitations. All right. Very, very important information right here, guys. Very important information. Radar does not show clouds. Radar does not show clouds. I'm sorry to explain it to you, but I give stage checks to a lot of the students, and when I have to talk about weather, I ask them, what information does radar show? And if the student tells me that the radar shows clouds, it's just not correct. So you're a VFR pilot, and you need to understand what weather products you can use to figure out what the weather conditions are outside. And if you're telling me that radar is showing you clouds, it's really not correct. There are some radar technologies now that might be able to hint and let us know some cloud information, but it is not the primary way for us to figure out clouds. So you as a VFR pilot, you're not allowed to fly in clouds. So if you need to figure out weather products that show you clouds and which ones don't show clouds, radar is not the primary way for you to figure out clouds. Radar does not really show much cloud information. The only exception to that rule would be like a thunderstorm. So if it's a really, 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 really tall thunderstorm that goes so high in the atmosphere, well, that means the rain and ice and hail is getting thrown so high in the atmosphere that we can get some radar returns that give us information to how high those cloud tops might be going. But regardless, we're not going to fly in thunderstorms, so it's kind of a moot point. Okay, we're pumping on. This will probably be our last slide. We're about running out of time here. We've been studying aerospace in the past few chapters. You're getting this gray ring on the chart, the gray ring on the sectional chart. That's called a TRSA, T-R-S-A, Terminal Radar Service Area. So it's typically at a towered airport like a Delta airspace, and this gray ring expands around, very similar to like the magenta Charlie ring. It's showing you the area where the TRSA exists. What you're learning is that this TRSA area can offer a lot of the same radar services as a Charlie airspace. However, this airport is not that busy. So it's not truly a Charlie airport. So your participation is actually voluntary. You can volunteer to participate in the TRSA, which I advise you would, because why not get another set of eyes watching your flight path? But it's not required. It's like Charlie airspace, yes, you must talk to them before you enter the Charlie. TRSA, no, you don't have to communicate with them. You could just fly into it. But you can go ahead and call them up and they can give you radar services in that TRSA area as well. So I realize that we're running out of time, so I'm not going to try to speak too much more. I'm going to click the button that says stop share. I'm going to click the button that lets me see everybody, manage participants. Is there any general questions going around? Does anybody, any feedback for me? Any feedback for me as I continue trying to move forward and help you learn better?
This session was actually a little better than the last one, so I don't know if it was like the comms or what have you. So you only kind of the connection only messed up a couple times that I can count.
With the question on the homework, it said that you got a plane off to your 10 o'clock. You kind of said you weren't really specific. Was that off the front or was it off your left wingtip? Like it was kind of hard to tell which one you were really leaning to, but it was off of your 10 o'clock. Okay,
so I'm trying to answer your question. You're saying I have a airplane at 10 o'clock?
Yeah, it says you have a traffic, or you have traffic off at your 10 o'clock. And then what you were saying a minute ago is that it's kind of off your front, but then it's also kind of off your left wingtip. So I don't really know how to answer it.
Okay. Are you guys seeing my screen right now? Are you seeing me?
Yeah.
Okay. So 12 o'clock is when I'm looking straight ahead, 12 o'clock.
Right.
So 11 o'clock for me would be slightly left.
Uh-huh.
10 o'clock would be more left. And then when I get to 9 o'clock, I'm straight off my left wingtip.
Okay.
So it's all about where you point your head, where you point your eyes to try to find the traffic looking out your window. So if air traffic control tells me that I have traffic at 10 o'clock, you should be looking slightly ahead of your left wingtip. It would be the correct answer for the ABC multiple guess FAA test question.
Okay. So slightly ahead of your left wingtip, not just slightly in front of the nose, I think is what the question says or something.
I think slightly ahead of the left nose would be more of an 11 o'clock. But what I'm communicating to you is that we never said anything about the wind. So if there's wind, that can change the answer.
Yeah. Okay, I got you. I don't think that one had anything to do with the wind, but I think there was another one a little bit further down that had wind factored into it.
Yep. So if there was wind, basically we have to point our nose into the wind. Anytime we fight wind, we point our nose into the wind. So if there was wind, then you would have already be angling your ship a certain direction to begin with. And then air traffic control, when they give you a traffic alert, that's in relation to your ground track.
Okay, I got you.
So there's lots of questions about that. So, when you get on FAA Sporty Study Buddy, you can actually, click that section and see a lot of the questions that, you might encounter again in the future.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you. You answered my question now.
Yeah, for sure. Great. Keep them coming. It's not like anybody has to travel. So, I don't mind staying on here a few extra minutes and, answering questions. If you got to go, I understand. Yeah, it's open forum.
I had a question about the ground controllers. So when you go through the book, it says you're obviously going to contact ground control while you're on the ground, so they can tell you which taxiway to take to get to the runway. Now, I guess my question is, when you're coming into land and you're talking to ATC, are you going to get a hold of ground control after you get on the ground? Like once you get clear of the runway, or is it because let me just read it in the book.
Take your time. Take your time.
Yeah, this is where it got a little confusing. Because it says you're going to use a control for landing procedures. So, but after you land and you get off of the runway and you're clearly active, at that point, would you be switching over trying to talk to ground control, or would they tell you, hey, contact ground control for taxiing instructions?
Okay. So I'm thinking that we're in the book here. Maybe is this the page you're on? I don't know. But it's
5 tax 16.
Yep, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at 515 in the book. And they're telling you about all these different air traffic controllers. And what I have to explain to you is the honest truth, okay? The honest truth is that every airport's different. Some airports are very, very busy and they have extra staff. Some airports are not that busy and they might just have one air traffic controller doing all the work at all the positions. So the lesson is that there's a certain way it's supposed to work, and then there's a certain way that just it happens to work in the real world. So my first answer is going to be the way it's supposed to work, because that's how the book says it, and that's how the FAA written ABC multiple choice exam is going to be. And so we had different controllers. You're on your way to the airport. Maybe you're talking to approach. You're approaching the airport 50 miles away. You're talking to approach. They're watching you on radar. They're giving you flight following. Great. Awesome. Once you get closer to the airport and you actually see the airport in sight, you see Holman Airport, Terre Haute Airport's in sight, and you're like, hey, I have the airport in sight. Great. They're going to have you now contact Tower. Tower historically does not use radar. So then you talk to Tower. Tower is going to give you clearance to land. They're going to tell you which runway to enter. Tower. Once you're on the ground, it is your job to get off the runway ASAP. I don't want to say as soon as possible, but as safety permits, you know? Don't rush and be unsafe, but once you got the airplane on the ground and you're slowing down and you got control, you need to exit the runway. Do you exit to the left? Do you exit to the right? It really doesn't matter, but if the tower controller told you exit left, if the tower controller told you to exit right, you just follow their instructions. But if they didn't say one thing or the other, you just need to get off the runway. So once you get off the runway, you pass the hold short line, you get your whole airplane beyond the hold short line, you come to a full stop. What should happen is towers should tell you to contact ground.
Okay.
And then you would not move from that position until you talk to ground, and ground would then tell you your instructions of how to taxi. The kicker is that, you know, some airports are very busy and very complex, and other airports are not that busy and not that complex. So if it's a very small airport and it's not that complex, the same one person that's working tower might be the same one person that's working ground. And so then that controller might try to get a little lazy and save time, and that controller could say, stay with me, taxi forward, Alpha to the ramp. And then you might not ever change frequency in the real world because that one air traffic controller is monitoring all the frequencies anyway. But the way it's supposed to work is that ground controller would have a separate frequency from the tower controller. I don't know if I'm answering your question or if it's still confusing.
Oh yeah, you're answering. So it's just going to depend on who you talk to and who they send you to. End of the day, because you could, like you said, you could be talking to approach. You get on the ground, and then they just give you taxi instructions. They could send you to tower.
Approach, you do not get clearance to land from approach. You would get clearance to land from tower.
Okay.
So tower, at a towered airport, Tower gives you the clearance to land. Tower gives you the clearance to take off. That is very solid. There's no black and white. I mean, there's no confusion. It's all black and white. Tower gives you clearance to land. Tower gives you clearance to take off.
Okay.
Now, what I'm saying is that ground should be a separate frequency, but at sometimes they might combine tower and ground together. Sometimes they can combine tower and ground together.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense.
These are great questions. I'm more than happy to put in some extra time with you. Nobody's traveling, you know, per se. So if you guys have more questions, I'm more than happy to keep them coming. I'm not trying to hold anybody up if they're trying to exit.
There's a question on the Sporty Study Buddy about supplement charts that always kind of baffles me. It says, I'm looking at one right now. It says, when approaching Lincoln Municipal from the west at noon for the purpose of landing, initial communication should be with. So does the direction of a heading, does that have to do with anything with communication, or is that just kind of like to throw you off?
Okay, so this particular question has everything to do with a busy airport. So what's going on is that at a Delta airport where there's not much going on, there's probably only going to be one frequency. And that one frequency is what you use regardless of what direction you're coming from. But that's not going to work at a very busy airport. So let's say you're coming into like Chicago or a Bravo airspace, something that's really, really large. There's just so many airplanes coming from so many directions. They have to divide and conquer. And suddenly, instead of there just being one controller for that position, they might have like 2 or 3 controllers and split up the work. And so half the controllers might deal with the airplanes coming from the east. The other half the controllers might deal with the airplanes coming from the west. And there might be separate frequencies depending upon where you're coming from. So to answer this question, I'm happy to answer it if you want to. We have to look at the figure. So I bet that somewhere in that question it says refer to figure so-and-so.
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to try to, I click the button that says exit full screen, and I'm going to click a button. Let's see, how do I do this? I'm going to go to FAA.gov. And when I load up FAA.gov, I can actually type in the search bar. Let me put the screen on my share for you. Share screen, and I'm on FAA.gov. Are you guys seeing my FAA.gov?
It's loading up.
Yeah, it's still loading. There it goes.
So I'm going to type into the search bar private supplement. I don't know if it's going to work or not. Private supplement. Private supplement. It says computer testing supplements. So that is the extra book that you will get access to when you take a written exam. And we are searching today for private pilot.
Figure, yes, sir. It'd be, I don't know if the figure has anything to do with it, but it'd be figure 52.
5.2?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it'll probably take a moment. My computer is working extra hard to download a PDF and video stream, so we'll see what happens. If you study figure 52 on your end, you might suddenly start seeing the answer. You might look around the top left or the top right or the bottom left or the bottom right, and it might explain to you what the different frequencies for approach controllers are, depending upon what direction you're traveling from. My screen's about 90% loaded according to the bar going across, so that's a plus. Okay, so I've made it to figure 3. I need to get down lower. is figure 42. I need to go lower.
5-2, sir.
60. I need to go back. We're fighting technology. Figure 58. I got to keep going. $56. Gosh. It's like slow motion. I'm clicking the button. 55. We're close. $54. This same supplement, this same picture book is the same one that's used for private, sport, recreational, glider. So not every figure is going to apply to your test. Oh, look at this picture. Okay. So here's an airport facilities directory for Lincoln, Nebraska. Is that the question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you said we're coming from the west, or we're on a heading at 270? We're coming from 270. What was the question?
It says, when approaching Lincoln Municipal from the west at noon for the purpose of landing, initial communication should be done with, and then it says null.
Okay. I almost picked it up. You'll have to repeat one more time. I'm from the west, or I'm on a heading of west, or what was it?
You're approaching from the west.
Okay. I'm approaching from the west. So down here, remember the R in a circle? Or do you see my screen right now?
Yes.
Okay. So on my mouse tip, I have an R in a circle. Do you guys see that? Yeah. So to talk to approach control, it might be the frequency of 124.0, but that says 180 to 359. So that means if you are an airplane located somewhere on the western side of the airport, somewhere from 180 up to 359, you're going to contact approach on 124.0. The next frequency, which I think this is the correct answer possibly, 124.8, it says in parentheses 360 to 179. So if you were somebody at the airport trying to look in the sky from from north all the way to south on the eastern side of the compass, 360 to 179. Man, I'm so sorry. I should have wrote this down. Normally I have it. You said we're on a heading of west or from the west?
Approaching from the west.
So if I'm approaching from the west, I'm thinking it's 124.0. I think that's the correct answer. Can you click it? Does it tell us if it's correct or wrong?
Yes, sir. It's the correct one.
Yeah. So 124.0, if we're coming from the west, which means we're on a heading of east, from and to, we're coming from the west, heading towards the east, then that means 124.0 would be the correct frequency to contact approach, because we fall in this area of 180 to 359. That is the direction that we are coming from. It's like this is the center of the airport in the center of the picture where my mouse is. So if I go all the way up north of the airport, that's 360. And as I drape my mouse along the right side of this circle, that would be the 360 to 180, the eastern side of the compass. That is not us. As I continue draping my mouse around this airport, I'm going from south, 180, all the way up here to north, 360. That's us. We're coming from the west.
That makes sense.
So like determining which frequency we'd use would be like determining what radial we'd be on for like a VOR. So if we're on any of those radials, essentially from south to north, I guess, starting, from 180 all the way up to 360, like you're saying, the western side of the compass, then yeah. Okay.
In this example, that is correct. Yes. Just,
right.
We got to be careful using the words from, using the word to, because
right.
It's called reciprocals. So like when you talk about the VOR and you talk about coming from and going to, and I had to ask the question 3 or 4 times to get my clarification because I wasn't reading it in front of me. And it changes the answer when you say the word from versus the word to. So you just got to be really careful when you're trying to figure out directions. Is it the fact that I am west? Am I traveling to the west? Am I coming from the west? I'm sorry to repeat myself, but that's going to be the most difficult thing as you try to correctly select A, B, or C.
That makes sense. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm hanging out here. I'm not flying airplanes right now, so I don't mind spending extra time. I'm trying to help you guys out. I'm not trying to hold you up. If there's more questions, that's fine. If you got to go, that's fine.
I think we're good, sir.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys on out of here. Keep studying hard. Keep working on your homeworks, your short answers. Take a practice written. Take multiple practice writtens. Oh my gosh, how important is that? Thanks guys for putting in the time, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
You too.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you.